Hello, Pete Knight here. In this video we're going to have a look at transferring a load from a belay device like a Petzl RIG onto a high efficiency progress capture pulley like a Mini Traxion whilst the load remains on the rope. So hot swapping between two different progress capture devices. First, just a bit of context why we might do this. So going down the pitch, lowering someone down, typically we'll have our high friction belay device mounted to the anchor and lower them down, or potentially belaying them up or down a ladder, but their load remains on the rope unless they get to the floor. So for some reason you need to instigate a haul. You've decided it's not feasible to put them all the way down to the ground, either because it's too far or just some reason that's not going to be viable or possible to do. So you're going to haul them back up. So kind of standard way to approach this would be to introduce some mechanical advantage onto our existing system. So standard Z-rig. And we can either pull up on that or potentially, to make it a little bit easier for us to manage, introduce redirection up high just to allow us to pull down and use a bit of body weight on that. And in doing so, we can keep pulling the load up until we get it back to the top of the pitch or a position of safety again. Mechanical advantage system helps us do that, but the rig, the belay device, is actually hindering us doing that. These are very high friction. If you think about it, that's the point of this device. It's for controlling the rope. So when you're lowering someone, you want a lot of grip on the device so your hands are having to do less work. That's a double-edged sword, because if we're going to try and lift someone up through it, we also have to overcome the friction generated by that device as well as put enough energy in to lift the person. So if we were planning to do a haul, we would put the highest efficiency piece of kit in there that we have available, so something like our progress capture pulley. The problem with these is reversing a haul. So if you've pulled someone up on this and they need to put them down a short way, or need to completely reverse the haul and put them back to the floor, these have a little bit of a kind of a challenging release where you have to usually counterbalance it, and that can result in things like being pulled off balance as a belayer and having less control. So what we're going to look at here is just a way of introducing the progress capture pulley into this system, taking the load off of the rig and onto the traction, hauling up through the traction, and if necessary reversing, so taking the traction back out of the system, reintroducing the load to the rig. All the while, the whole time, the rope will be loaded. Okay, so here's our loaded belay system set up again. Some weight down on the rope, as well as our belay device, our standard 3-to-1 Z-rig setup, and a progress capture pulley. We're going to need something else. We're either going to want a short sling or longer sling doubled over, shrunk down, or potentially a chain of carabiners for this. You'll see why in a moment. A sling's probably better, just simply because there are fewer links than a literal chain of carabiners, all of which need to be done up and need to be secure. We're going to use this short sling to hang the Mini Traxion from, so it's going to go from our anchor down onto the rope. When we take the rope and we mount it in the Mini Traxion and we release it from the belay device, then that will be our kind of chain of safety from the anchor to the person hanging on the rope. So the link that we're using needs to be absolutely kind of fit for that purpose. So a sling, a tied loop of rope, perhaps not that prusik cord you've had around your neck for the last 20 years, something that's absolutely bomber. So I've just got a 18cm quick draw sling here I'm using, but you could just have your normal 60cm sling, doubled or tripled over. Doesn't want to be a massively long one, and we want to keep everything as high as we can, but we just need a bit of room to work here. It'll make more sense when you see it set up in a second though. So I'm going to take my sling and I'm going to attach it onto the anchor point, the same one where my belay device is mounted. Okay, onto this I'm going to then mount my progress capture pulley, and I want to do this so when it goes onto the rope here, that the teeth are up facing towards the belay device. So we always want the teeth on the haul side of the system, the pull side of the system, not the casualty side of the system. So what I'm going to do here is just install that on. Okay, make sure the side plates are lock secured. I'm going to engage the progress capture, the tooth cam. I'm going to pull that down the rope to get it nice and tight through here and make sure that's latched onto the rope. Okay, so what's going to happen next is I'm going to take the weight off of the rig and put it onto the progress capture pulley. So I can just lower out using the handle, and you'll see as this turns it takes the load, and then I can pull the free rope out of the rig. So the rig is no longer taking any of the weight in the system. I can now take the rope out of the rig. I still need to leave this here because I might need to reverse that, but now I have my load supported by my progress capture pulley, which is a super efficient progress capture device. So going into my haul proper, I'm going to put my mechanical advantage system on. So again, 3 to 1. Pull up on that. Again, I can opt for a high anchor change of direction on there, just to make things a little bit easier for me to pull. So now I get a really efficient lift, very little friction to overcome there, and bring the load up. There is a limit to how high I can lift someone. If I took my 3 to 1 out, maybe just put the pulley directly onto the person, I could generate another 20 centimeters or so of lift there. But I've lost some of that height advantage I had with my high anchor originally. So that's something we do need to bear in mind. The aim of the haul is not just to pull someone up the pitch, I need to get them off the pitch. So we need to be able to secure them onto a traverse rope with the cow's tails, or potentially swing them into a ledge. So I might need a little bit more height. So that might mean I need to swap back onto the rig just for that final kind of 50-60 centimeters of lift, but I've done the bulk of the haul up using the kind of high efficiency progress capture device. Swapping back is totally possible and relatively straightforward. I'm going to leave my progress capture on the rope, but I'm just going to take it off of this loop here for a moment. Leave that attached because I'll still be able to reach that. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to take the rope from the pull side of traction and I'm going to put it back into my belay device. Okay, so I can pull all the slack in out of this by hand. With a full person weight on, I won't be able to do any more of that by hand, but I have my mechanical advantage system. So with the Z-rig still in place, I can now put the rope back into it. Okay, and as I pull in, which what happens to the traction here, the traction will rock over and the line from the casualty to the rig will go taut and the weight will come off of this. So at this point now, I'm able to open the teeth up, lock that open and remove that from the system. I now have my load fully back on the rig. I can get that additional 20, 30, 40 centimeters of lift, whatever I need to secure my person's cowtails onto the traverse line. Or if I've done this swap around so that I can put them back down again for some reason, I can just remove my mechanical advantage system from the rope. We can take our rope back into the friction crab and immediately go back into lowering them. So this time we're set up to lower on a deviated pitch like you might see in some of the mines of North Wales. We've got a belay back from the edge and an anchor point over here, and the rope runs through a deviation and pulley directly above the drop itself. And again, just for a bit of variety, and this time I'm going to show you using a version 2 of the Pro Traxion. So we'll start by lowering our person down. Okay, To bring them back up again, just going to make sure the rig's locked. Going to install our sling with our progress capture pulley onto the same anchor as the rig, and with the protraction, just like with the Mini or the Spock, I need to make sure the teeth are on the belay device side, pull side of the rope. Once that's on, check we're securely closed, engage the teeth, push that down the rope as tight as I can, get that to bite. I can now release rope through the rig, load comes onto the protraction there, and take the rig completely out of the system. Now use my 3-to-1 pulling against that. Again, nice, efficient hauling system, very low friction components in here now. Much easier than pulling through a high friction device like the rig. And there we go. So if I'm pulling someone up a deviated pitch, I'm definitely going to need to lower them down a bit so I can swing them back into the ledge, or clip them on their cow's tails and then kind of Tyrolean them across. So again, just to swap back, just need to take the dead rope out of the 3-to-1, but the 3-to-1 can stay on the live side. We're going to put the rope back into our belay device here at the anchor, take in as much slack here by hand as we can, and then we can put our rope back in the 3-to-1. We'll do it just enough of a lift to free this off. I can now open the teeth and remove the protraction from, move the protraction from the system. Take the 3-to-1 off. And now we're back into lowering mode. So that's either back down to the bottom if needed to, or till they're hanging on the cow's tails, or perhaps with the other end of a rope or spare rope to then pull them into the ledge as we lower them down. So there you have it. If you're already carrying a progress capture device like a Traxion, you've now got potentially another method here you can use if the situation arises. Just like any technique though, make sure you practice in a safe environment or under the supervision of a qualified instructor before you have to rely on this for real. Stay safe and thanks for watching.